Hello and welcome to Comedy Slab Edition 16. We are the Simon Mayo and Joe Wiley of British podcasting. I'm not sure whether that's currently a good thing or not, but we will get some reaction on Twitter. Who's the case.
Hang on, who's got to get up and go out now? Because it's which one am I?
I don't know. Maybe you're Joe Wiley, but Joe with an E. Actually, no, I'd prefer to work with Joe Wiley without the E.
Yeah, if you're a real comedy anorak, maybe I'm Gerald Wiley.
Oh, do we leave that as the mystique it remained for years, or should we explain?
Google it, mate. Google it. Just Google it.
Where's your sense of fun? Anyway, I'm allegedly Adrian Lacey. I am in Kent, in the southeast corner of England, and in the... I would stop myself saying frozen north. A, it's not north, and A, you're not. B, you're not frozen, and C, I can't do the alphabet. But it is.
A, it's not
please.
north. A, it's not frozen. And who's nicked
B,
all the other letters?
You're beautiful. C. Anyway, it's Shane O'Connor, SOC, Standard Out Q.
Hello.
As it means in radio, and you are somewhere in the mysterious Midlands.
Yeah, very mysterious. It's all shrouded in mist. And
I thought that was just smog.
There's a bloke on the corner of Birmingham having a cigarette and it's drifting across. He's vaping, darling, vaping. With all vapour.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I saw a shop near me which said, what was it, period vaping? No, that can't be right. It sort of implied that it was, a retro vaping shop. I thought, well, it's only been around for a year or two.
Victorian vaping outfitters.
Yeah. Oh, can I do you now, sir?
Yeah.
Oh, that crops up in the show we are going to dissect on the slab this week. It is none other than Dad's Army, Episode 1, Series 1. It's about as early on in the lifetime of a British classic sitcom as it's possible to get. The bad news is, if you're looking for it on iPlayer, it's only hanging around well, depends how soon you got this podcast. You should have it immediately because you're subscribed, of course, but it is literally only on iPlayer for a day or two after the podcast has gone up. But the good news is there are box sets of the entire Dad's Army, all 9 series, certainly on DVD, maybe on download for all I know. I certainly found them easily enough, HMV and others.
As I normally do, I'll normally put a couple of links as to where you can get them, and you're right, the one link I put was the DVD. I didn't bother with the iPlayer because it's hit and miss. I mean, they'll put it on when they're showing it, won't they? So sometimes you can go there and you can find it, sometimes you won't. Download on DVD. Buy on DVD, and also download on Amazon. You can download per episode, I think, or some of them are per series as well. But yeah, you can get a digital download as well. 9 series, boy, that is a lot of comedy, isn't it?
It is indeed, and the reason this particular episode is around, we touched on it in the last edition of Comedy Slab. It's because it's just in the last few weeks had its 50th anniversary, half a century old.
Incredible.
And it ran for, 9 series, which roughly equates to 9 years, isn't it? And went through to, I think, November 1977.
Yeah.
It's a BBC television production before they had such things as BBC Studios Productions and Hat-Trick Productions and all those outsourced production companies. I believe... It will have been made. It must have been made at where I used to work, my old workplace, Television Centre. My only hesitation is the BBC. Even when I started, which of course was years after Dad's Army had finished, but not that many years, they still had Lime Grove going, but that had by then become what they called the TPC, the Topical Production Centre. But in the earlier days, they would have done. Well, some of their non-newsy type shows there. They also had Hammersmith Riverside Studios.
Oh, I never heard of that.
Yeah, well, my dad recalled.
What was that like? Was that like a television studio, or was that a theatre studio? Was that?
Well, nowadays it is a sort of artsy centre with stage and also cinema. Well, I say that, I haven't been there for years. But at that time, yes, I don't know whether it was converted film studios, as some of them were, but it was TV studios. And the last time I went there, which was yonks ago, you could still see the where it said vision on and sound on,
wow.
where it would light up. Yeah, so that got a little few hairs at the back of the neck standing out because I'm that kind of annoyed.
There was a kids program, wasn't there, called Vision On, which catered for children who hadn't got a disability, but also for children who were hearing impaired, and that's why they call it Vision On, not Vision On, Sound On. And they used to do signing, didn't they, and stuff like that. But it was only when I was an adult that I realised why it was called that and got the whole concept of it.
Oh, yeah, ditto me. So it was one of those many in things that TV folk think everyone else understands, but they don't because it's lingo.
Yeah, you wouldn't know, would you, really? But there you go.
Anyway, we're going to have 3 clips from this Series 1, Episode 1 of Dad's Army. Now, I'm pretty sure you're going to have enjoyed it because although you hadn't seen this particular episode before any more than I had, it's a birthright. If you're born in Britain, you have to understand Dad's Army. Certainly if you're of our generation, you're not given a choice. But I don't know. I thought it stood up really well. How was it for you, darling?
Well, I got to say, I think Lord Reith would be proud of you this week. And for those who don't know, he's the man who designed the round floral tributes that go on coffins.
Oh, that's an awful joke.
Is
that one of yours?
Yeah,
you're laying claim to that.
I thought it was great because it's like it even works if you write it down as well because it's spelt wrong, isn't it? You know, no. But Lord Reith, of course, the Reithian principles of the when he started the BBC, he was the first director general of the BBC, wasn't he? And he's
technically, I'm afraid, general manager in those days.
Oh yeah, he's general manager, wasn't he? Yeah. But his principles, he's guiding light. He sort of said, well, you know, we're there to educate and to entertain. And you did both of those because you were talking about last week and you said Dad's Army and you were describing it to me to guess what it was that you were going to pick. And one of the first things you said was it's a story told in flashback. And I went away from last week's podcast thinking, what the hell's he on about? It's told in flashback. I don't remember it flashback. And I kind of thought, it was going to flashback at the start of every episode, and that's how it was told. I had no idea. I've seen this episode before, but I don't. The first opening scene is of them all sat round at a dinner, isn't it?
All in quotes, the present time, which was 1968.
As much older men. I had no idea. I don't know where I got to. I don't know why I never knew that, but I would, in a pub quiz, I would have been hounded out like a common dog into the street because I'd have said no, I've got no idea what you're on about. So there you go. You've educated me.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's actually inform, educate, and entertain. If you think I've managed all 3, then I'm delighted.
Yeah, but I didn't. That's why you ruined that because I tried to sweep in form under the carpet to do you a favour, and
I've only gone and drawn attention to
and
it.
Basically, you just lifted your skirt and shown everybody your bloomers, haven't you? That's basically what you've done.
Bloomers.
Yeah.
I've taken a leg off the 3-legged milking stool of life and precariously balanced on 2 out of 3 legs, but
with it upside down.
May have said, well, yeah, but Meatloaf said 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So it could have been a whole lot worse. Yes, now this flashback, well, I imagine most of the population wouldn't have known. And the reason being, they never, ever again referred to it. And the very last episode never came back to the present.
What was... I really... You know what? Since I've watched it and since recording this podcast, I've sat there thinking, Croft and Perry really missed a trick. Why didn't they... Why didn't they
should have come back to it, yeah.
Or every episode could have started with that as part of the... It could have helped tell the story, couldn't it? I couldn't believe they'd missed such a great opportunity for a comic device and not... They'd used it and then just thrown it away. I don't know why that happened.
Well, can I tell you why I think they would never have done it on a week-by-week basis? It would be down to money, because it was a lot of time in makeup, bringing the guys, aging those who need it. With all due respect, some of them didn't need quite so much aging, but it would be fiddly. Fine if you throw a few extra bob at it, but
yeah, but you wouldn't, would you? You'd record those scenes for the whole series in one go, wouldn't you? You'd just do the whole.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that's the other option, but even then, it's still extra time. But I think I'll tell you why the flashback was there in the first place. Do you want to have a guess first?
What? So tell me why it wasn't.
Why there was the one flashback in the first instance? Why would they want to do a flashback at the beginning?
No idea.
It was sensitivities around usual BBC worries. Oh, we're going to upset the old guard, or almost literally the old guard, people who were genuinely in the Home Guard, as I think it became known in the end.
Right.
And they. Well, that's the reason given. Although I find it slightly odd because if you're going to be upset anyway, you'll be upset 2 minutes after the flashback's finished because it's hang on, this is a comedy. We're taking the mickey out of people who aren't quite up to resisting the massed ranks and massed tanks of the Wehrmacht and Hitler's brigade.
But they did upset people, didn't they? They did. I think like. In the drama of this that the BBC did, I think in the script there they kind of alluded to the fact, and I know Jimmy Perry's talked about this, hasn't he? Was it Jimmy Perry or was it David Croft? I can't remember. One of them talked about how they had focus group and they showed it to them, and most of them
it bombs, didn't it?
Didn't like it, yeah. And if they hadn't lost the report and like sort of shuffled it away and ignored it, kind of thing, it would never have got made in the first place. So. It didn't kind of go down well. But 1968 we're talking about, aren't we? This episode was shown. I was 2.
I'm not going to continue that thought or that line of supposed reasoning. So you don't quite remember seeing it. I don't remember seeing it until it was quite a few series into its run. That's what I'm claiming anyway. Shall we hear a clip of audio? You're probably more primed than I am. Sorry, I've got it written down in an inaccessible place at the moment. Do you want to kick off?
Yeah, well, this we start off, as you would do in an audio podcast, with a visual gag.
It is going to need some scene setting, isn't it?
Yeah, there's lots of great audio in there as well. But basically, I mean, this is the formation of the Home Guard, isn't it? So they realise, I think by this stage they've heard on the radio that the plan is that they're going to form a Home Guard and that it's going to be the backbone of home defences. And Mainwaring has already, who's a bank manager, has already kind of spied the opportunity for him to install himself as a captain. He's got no right to do that at all, has he? He's like kind of self-appointed. I'm going to be the captain. It's like it's the easiest promotion in the army that you'll ever see because he just goes, well, I'm going to be the captain. But they're going through the manual, aren't they, and saying what they need to do and what's going to happen and you know what has to be done. And he's saying about how he needs a communications officer who should be a young lad called Pike.
Don't tell him, Pike.
So, and I think that's pretty well, isn't it? That's pretty well where we pick up the story.
Your first job is to jump on your bicycle and go round the town delivering this message. All local defence volunteers to report to the church hall at 6 o'clock tonight. Try that. Oh, come here, let me show you. All local defence volunteers to report to the church hall at 6 o'clock tonight. I don't know how you do it. Well, history repeats itself, Wilson. Times of peril always bring great men to the fore. Wellington, Churchill,
Al Jolson.
I suppose loads of the gags will need footnotes, but you can imagine a coal scuttle, if you know what coal is, for our younger audience. Sorry, that sounds terribly patronising. But anyway, because he's held this coal scuttle up to his mouth, he takes it away, and the big laugh at the end is he's got black, the coal dust effectively around his mouth. The Al Jolson references to a certain gentleman who, in the first talkie, so it's a kind of film reference, isn't it?
Yeah.
He blacked up as they did in those days to play a black character. So
it's a variation of the telescope thing, isn't it? The telescope gag is a similar kind of thing where they put the boot polish on the telescope and they look to the telescope.
Oh, you take it away from your eye.
And they've got a big black eye kind of thing. It's a variation of that gag. The one thing that came away thinking about that was how poor the makeup was, because it didn't look like coal dust, did it? It was like a kind of like shiny, sticky sort of stuff they put on.
It was an odd one, yeah. But of course, yes, the technology and the materials used would have been totally different. And since we're talking about what the market left, it is a black and white show, which is interesting because by '68 it could have been colour, and they may yet find some colour footage. I imagine it was recorded in colour. Is because, do you know why it's black and white and not colour, even though colour was available at that hour?
No.
At that time? I think it's because it went out on BBC One, which was black and white only. BBC Two was on 625 lines, as well as 405. 405 couldn't carry the colour.
Oh, so they could carry the colour.
I think. What's that snoring sound I hear from our younger? I know it's actually everyone snoring. Okay, fine.
Yeah, hang on. No, it's all right. I'll entertain them. They were coal scuttle children. Did you have a coal scuttle?
Yeah.
Have we?
Well, yes.
Yeah, it was used to
we're not quite as old as we sound. I hope.
It seems like an age away now, doesn't it? It's really weird. But yeah, I mean, it was only the 70s. You still had a Park-Ray fire in a lot of UK houses that burned coal.
Park-Ray.
Yeah, do you remember the Park-Ray fire? They were like a coal fire in a chimney, but they had a very much like a gas fire look front to them,
with tiles.
Well, this was just the fire on a bit, not so much the hearth or the grate or whatever, the surround around it. This was just the fire itself. Google it.
Right. Google will say, what's coal?
Do you know, I wonder whether we're the only generation now who can watch black and white and it doesn't diminish the enjoyment. Because did it bother you? It didn't bother me.
I virtually forgot it once we got going.
Me too.
And the only thing was, is that hashtag Me Too or just ordinary Me Too? Just need to be clear now.
That's Cole Me Too.
Cole Porter. What? Yes. You've lost me now. He's lost me, folks.
Yeah, that's
I don't
me
get
as well.
every gag that he delivers. But
I don't.
Okay, we'll try and salvage the show if we can. So... we had a boiler that you shoveled coal into, and we had a coal outhouse. So
we only had a bunker. Hitler was in the house a lot of the time.
I knew you were a traitor. Well, of course, we had a Nazi in the family, but that was Ronald Lacey. But you have to refer to previous shows to find out he was in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
I just dust that off, coal dust that off every now and again.
Yeah.
When I was more into photography, I was into black and white photography, not as a snobbish thing, but I just liked the look. I still do. Tell you what makes me really sad. We're reaching the end now of when you turn to your newspaper or if you look at it online, if there's an obituary of someone, we're starting to get into the phase now where the photos are colour, which makes me feel slightly threatened because I see the Grim Reaper chasing after me.
That's interesting,
But in the last 5 years, I've noticed it more. I mean, it's inevitable, but there have been the most exquisite black and white portraits of poor unfortunates who've shuttled off this coal shuttle. And once we move out of that era, or it really is the end of that era, then there's only going to be colour photos accompanying, I think, and people will. Well, I think we'll lose some of the sense of how powerful black and white can be.
Well, at least we'll be able to look back at it and say, "Oh, I remember when people used to die in black and white."
These days they're in colour
because they
like.
couldn't afford a colour licence. I have to say, the intro was quite interesting as well, because this would have been the first time people would have seen the graphic that starts Dad's Army, where
Oh, yeah.
the Union flag goes across France, and then 3 Nazi flags come up and poke at it and push it back. And the interesting thing was the audience laughed.
I noticed that, and later on, I'm pretty sure, again, I'm not sure if those, it probably was the same graphics, it would have been made in colour, but, in later series, everything was in colour, and you wouldn't get that laughter at that point.
No, I don't know whether they just never showed it to an audience or whether people didn't laugh. And the other thing was, there was some newsreel footage at the start of actual World War II footage, and they showed some soldiers on bicycles, and all the audience laughed at that as well.
Well, that's what I thought. I mean, the whole rationale, as we were saying, of the flashback, I mean, it goes up in a puff of sort of smoke within seconds, because you're laughing at the unpreparedness of the British Army. And actually, as you say, I mean, it's proper footage. So you're laughing at real soldiers. I mean, I imagine they weren't cycling towards Hitler's highly trained and highly resourced army.
No.
But even so, that is the gag, isn't it? Oh, look at us Brits, heroic failures.
But that was real, wasn't it? I mean, that really happened. That was footage from the war, and people were laughing at that because they thought it was some kind of comic construct or something. The interesting thing, it reminded me of, in Only Fools and Horses, I think it's in the first episode, the very first time, it could be the second episode, the very first time that Del Boy calls Rodney a plonker.
Right.
And you can hear the cricket.
Really?
Because it hadn't been established as a catchphrase. And he says, "You plonker, Rodney." And there's nothing.
You'd think there'd be something, though, just for the word plonker. Which
No,
is
it's really
laughable.
jarring. It really is. There's a couple of times as well, and he'll say things, and he'll do like his spoof French and stuff like that, and people haven't caught on to that yet, and they don't really go for it. Yeah, the first couple of Only Fools and Horses are quite eye-opener, and I think it's probably the same with most series, isn't it? If people don't know what to expect, they don't know what to how to react. I got to say, casting is just delicious, isn't it? In Dad's Army, I think that was the secret of it.
Yes, and the quality of the characters. I mean, I'm not the first person to say the term sitcom is wrong anyway, isn't it? It's car-com, character comedy.
Yeah.
Situations follow character, surely. You couldn't get away with a show that's just got wonderful situations but really lousy characters and lousy actors and so on.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't carry. And coming again to thinking of it as the audience seeing it for the first time, I'm very pleasantly surprised just how, I mean, all these characters appear to arrive fully formed, don't they?
Yeah.
It's not like they're evolving and, Corporal Jones, who's also the butcher, that, he's finding his feet and a bit wobbly. He's absolutely on point straight away.
They don't like it up him first episode.
Well, they certainly don't.
That was Jones's catchphrase. They cold steel, sir. They don't like it up him. They don't like it up him. And I thought, wow, first episode that was there.
So,
Ian Lavender, interestingly enough, who plays Pike, 22, I think he was when he was in that.
Gosh,
22 years old. What a great ensemble for him to learn with. I mean, people like John Lemaitre, who, it's just what a gent,
brilliant.
I had to look up because there's a famous thing about his last words, isn't there? There's before he died. Do you know that? You heard what he said?
It's ringing a vague bell, but I can't remember. Do remind me.
It's so John Lemaitre. Apparently, his last words were, "It's all been rather lovely." Which
As opposed to Adam Faith talking about how poor the programming is on Channel 5.
Is that what it was? Adam Faith. Do you know I was due to interview Adam Faith?
Gosh.
2 weeks before he died, and he cancelled because he wasn't very well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, my tenuous second-hand anecdote is I used to have a masseuse, if I could say such a thing, and she got sort of chatted up by Adam Faith, and she said to me, I mean, no names, no pack drill, not casting nasturtiums, but she liked her men, shall we say, and she said, you know, if he hadn't been quite so frail, I'd have said yes. I thought, lucky son. He was about half her height. She's a beautiful, tall, 6 foot plus.
Can we just spin back a bit? I used to have a masseuse.
No, we're not going any further. It's enough to be sort of processing the decree nisi.
I think that quote's got to go in the when we tweet out that this podcast episode is available. It'll have to say, find out why at Adrian Lacey 01 used to have a masseuse.
Usually if you're doing a radio show, then they say, oh, well, the extras will be in the podcast, but we're and don't misinterpret the term extras in this connection, please. I think we should move on.
Just as long as this podcast has a happy ending, I'm not really bothered, to be honest with you. Arthur Lowe was a what a character. I mean, off screen I'm on about, not on screen. Did you know the story about he wouldn't learn his lines?
Really?
Oh,
I was just impressed by. I'm just coming back to it. Years since I've seen A Dad's Army. Just how he's in every scene, how much work he's got to do. I didn't know that.
He fluffs his lines quite a lot throughout the 9 series, and again, probably because there's a lot for him to do. Davy Croft, his co-writer and director, apparently once took him to one side and he said to him, "Listen, Arthur," he said, "You're learning your lines in our time." He used to learn them on the bus on the way in. Apparently, they go and pick him up by bus and bring him in, or car or whatever, and whatever they brought him in. You know, if they were on location, it was bus. If it was in the studio, it was car. And he'd be learning his lines, and he'd be there, and he'd go, "Oh, can I have 2 minutes?" And they'd have a break in film. Learning the next scene, and he said, "Look, this is no good." He said, "Wouldn't it be a good idea?" He said, "if perhaps you learnt them overnight." And he just ignored him. He didn't bother at all.
He's the boss, isn't he? He can do it.
So,
as in life, as in art.
But he really pressed the point anyway. Croft did, and he said to him, he was going to give him 4 copies. He said, "I'll give you 4 copies of the script," he said, "and you can leave one here. You can leave one on the bus. You can leave one on the underground." He said, "and you can take one home." And Arthur Lowe turned to him and he said, "Oh, I wouldn't have that rubbish in my house."
Cheeky so-and-so.
Which I just thought was so lovely. It's really just, the characters that were on set must have been awesome to make this thing. I think that anecdote comes from Bill Pertwee, who did a lot of observation while they were filming and observed the other characters in there. But Arthur Lowe, what a guy.
I did read actually on that, and each time I need to remind myself, you'll probably remind me, inform, educate, if not entertain.
Yeah.
ARP stands for Air Raid
Patrol.
Personnel? Patrol.
Yeah.
Right. The thing is, I was reading that, of course, fortunately, the Home Guard never have to take on Hitler or any of his minions. Not sure if they'd have been quite up to it for all the commitment they showed. So the show dramatically, it needed tension, didn't it? It needed some pushback from somewhere, and of course it came from the Bill Pertwee character wearing the tin hat with the ARP on it. You know, the guy who would go around insisting on the blackout curtains, and you're only allowed 3-5 inches of bath water or whatever it was.
Yeah. And people they were like that, weren't they? I mean, that was an accurate portrayal from what people have said who were around at the time. Said the air raid wardens were, power crazy. The power went to their head, and they went mad with it, really.
And then after the war, of course, they became traffic wardens.
Yeah.
No, that's unfair.
Shall we have another clip talking about the air raid warden? This is after Bill Pertwee has been in to see Captain Mainwaring and what's his number 2 called? I forgot his name now. Wilson. Yeah, he's been to see Mainwaring and Wilson. And he's told them that he's having an air raid meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Air raid warden meeting. Yeah. Do you want to pick up?
Yeah, sorry, it all comes back to me now. We should say they practice in the church hall I'd forgotten. I mean, you have to look at the significance of this both in the war and also thinking how it would appear to the public grown-ups in the 1960s, when the church was more powerful. Okay, it was waning by then, but so they do this sort of the manoeuvres, as it were, or the discipline and forming lines and all that in the church hall, but the our AIP chappie had already booked the hall, and so they have to squeeze into isn't it the vicar's? It's the vestry, I think, which is the kind of vicar's office in the church. Yeah. So there's sort of physical comedy. That they're all squashed in, all these potential volunteers, recruits are squashed into this tiny space, and Arthur Lowe, as Mannering, is sort of bellowing out at them. There's shades of, what is it, Henry V, Shakespeare, and a bit of Laurence Olivier. I bet that was somewhere in the template here. He's kind of motivating his men, but they're sort of 6 inches away from him, shouting at them.
Oh, so what are we going to do, sir? We've only enrolled 4 so far. Well, we'll just have to dispense with the formalities. Get them all in here. All right. Yeah. Right, come on. At the double. Inside here. All of you. Come on. All right, right on now. Gather round. Quickly, please. We all in. Now, men, you've answered your country's call today. We're all here to defend our homes and our loved ones. And I know that you will not shirk that duty. We've no guns, we are naked. But we have one invaluable weapon in our armory, ingenuity and improvisation.
That's 2.
I want you all to go to your homes, gather what weapons you can, and come back here in an hour's time. From tonight, whatever the odds, we Englishmen, we British, we here are going to be able to say, come on, Jerry, we're waiting for you. Don't forget your gas mask. That's all. Dismiss. Thank you, sir.
That's really very nice.
You wave me goodbye.
I love it. And there's that visual thing in there as well, where Fraser he's probably the closest face to him, and he says about English, and he like glares at him. That's where he corrects himself and says, "Oh, British."
Because Fraser is, of course, Scottish. For those not in the know, and catchphrase "We're doomed."
Yeah, although it wasn't. Again, he wasn't. It was interesting because they asked him what his profession was, and he said he ran a philately shop, didn't he?
He did.
Did you notice
Philately
that?
will get you everywhere.
But,
yeah, I did notice that.
But he was actually the Undertaker, wasn't he, in later series? I don't know whether that changed officially or whether they just rewrote it thinking, oh, well, people won't notice anyway.
I don't know. Either that or he did some kind of stamp on the corpses. No, that doesn't work. I was desperately trying to do a gag on the fly there. That's why I'm not a stand-up comic.
The interesting thing about that is that I don't know if you're familiar with Mitchell and Webb, but they used to do a sketch where they were in an office that was unfeasibly small. Have you seen that?
Not remembering it. But if you carry on,
there was the 2 of them, and they said, "Can you just come in here a minute?" And then he calls him into the office, and then it cuts to the office, and they're in this like little cupboard. And there's even a bloke up the ladder fixing the lighting or something. And they're just all trying to move around it. And I thought, I wonder whether they got the idea from something like watching Dad's Army, because they would have been about the right age, I guess, to have seen that. You do wonder, don't you, whether things have influenced other things that you see later on in life, or whether, it plants the seed or whatever. But yeah, no, it just put me in mind of that. The like working at close quarters was the whole gag there.
It's yes. What it does is I was once told by a friend of mine when he was training to be a doctor. There's something in human psychology, but I think perhaps we feel it more keenly in these benighted islands. It's called constant levels of intimacy. And hear me out on this. It's got nothing to do with masseurs, so don't get excited.
I'm going to say, finally get to explain it, yeah.
But if you think about it, okay, if you're on a bus, no, that's a bad example. Say you're in, I don't know, a doctor's waiting room even with people you don't know, but you're not normally, unless the NHS is really hard pressed, you're not normally that crammed into a doctor's waiting room. But if you take the same people who might sort of, and probably the further north you go from where I am, more your direction, the friendlier people become, and at least acknowledge each other. I want to believe that's true. North of Watford, where I was raised. But you put them in a lift, and then because they are so close to each other, they stop making eye contact. So there's constant levels of intimacy. It's almost you're compensating for the physical closeness. You stop looking at each other, because imagine trying to focus on someone 6 inches away.
Yeah.
So that's partly where I think the comedy is coming from. But of course, I could be overthinking it.
It's the whole thing is just beautifully done as well. Would these have been filmed in front of a live audience? Would they have been filmed as live, or?
Oh yeah. Anything interiors, and in fact, you've touched on a good point there. That in this particular one, correct me if I'm wrong, there's not any exteriors, are there?
No.
Whereas, once they got going, there would be quite a lot of location work, and that in those days, very odd. And I think again, we might need to explain for people who might not get why the picture quality looks different. Loads of stuff in the 70s, even into the 80s. It was to do with initially the video cameras couldn't be taken out on location, or they hadn't got portable video cameras. And also there were union complications, which, that's a sort of social history thing. And so you had the film quality for exterior shots, and then you came into the studio and you were getting sort of videotape quality for interiors. But as you say, there's no exterior stuff in this particular episode.
Lovely to see John Ringham, who's an actor that you probably wouldn't know his name, but you'd certainly know his face. I remember him as Vince's father-in-law in Just Good Friends, starring Paul Nicholas. Do you remember that?
I know of it. Is this the ultra posh dude with his golf club?
Yes.
And his bow tie?
Yeah, because I thought, well, that's unusual. He's an extra with a speaking part. And then I thought, actually, I know his face. I know, he looks like. I didn't know his name was John Ringham, but yeah, he.
Are you sure it wasn't John Paul George and Ringham?
I don't know.
I'll get my coat.
I'll ring him and find out.
Hey!
He played a Private Bracewell. Apparently, he was in the pilot, but he also he was set to become a major. I think he was supposed to be like a recurring character,
Right.
and they dropped that. I think he played Captain Bailey in 4 later episodes as well. So
that's probably like being Pete Best and not being in the regular Beatles lineup.
Yeah, because they were pretty. I mean, it was a launch pad for. Well, although some of them, it was quite interesting because Arnold Ridley, who played Godfrey, didn't he look young?
Oh, yes.
Because he got older
relatively.
and frailer as time went on, didn't he? Over the filming of the series, but I mean, he'd been in the Archers and Crossroads and theatre and all sorts of stuff.
That.
Oh yeah.
But since you touch on that, he was the one exception to these. I felt, I could be wrong, but I thought he was slightly out of the character he later became, maybe to do with the frailty and so on and so forth. In fact, will we hear it in this clip? I think we do in this third clip. He bites back, doesn't he? A bit of pushback to Captain Mainwaring.
Yeah,
which I went, ooh, that wouldn't be the Godfrey I knew.
No, he was very subservient in later episodes, wasn't he, Godfrey? He didn't want, because as you say, he was getting older and he's getting more frail, and he was playing it older and frailer. But yeah, he didn't. He just wanted a quiet life. You could tell he didn't kind of really want to be there at his age, did he? Sort of thing. I love that you've chosen this clip because in my notes, I thought this was the funniest line in the whole episode.
Well, the payoff of this clip,
yeah,
you won't spoil it. Yeah.
And I'd singled it out for mention, but I didn't mention it because of the fact that you've chosen it as a clip. But I just think it's absolutely delicious. Really.
Yeah. So they're all in their sort of disciplined lines, aren't they? I don't think we need to set it up too much. But so we're in the church hall here.
But it's by this stage that we've realised that they haven't got anything, have they? They've got. They're not going to get any equipment.
And they're ad-libbing weaponry in effect, aren't they?
They've got nothing, have they? Really, Have they received the parcel at this stage? I can't think with the pepper to throw in the enemy's face.
I think that comes slightly later.
Okay.
And there's and later on there's a reference almost again like a Henry V speech. I'm not ruining this clip because it's not in the clip we're about to hear, but Mainwaring goes into his sort of speech mode again and stirring the boys to take on the Hun and all of that. And he says, and he lists the things that we might not have the weaponry yet, but we've got the British plucky spirit and all of that, and we have the pepper to make them sneeze.
It's just because as we realise by this stage now that there's what we would say in modern parlance, there is no budget, is there? They've got nothing.
Which is why the BBC liked it.
Yeah.
But there is one exception, isn't there? Which is where we come in with this clip.
Where did you get that gun?
Eh?
The gun, where did you get it?
Well, it belongs to my friend, actually.
I see. He's got a friend. A gun.
Yes, I can see that, sir, yes.
Well?
Yes, well...
I'm the officer.
Yes, sir, quite.
You're the sergeant.
Quite, yes, sir.
We ought to have that.
Yes.
Don't ask you for it.
Well, don't you think it would have more authority coming from you, sir?
No.
Right. Excuse me. Mr. Mainwaring would rather like to have your rifle. Who would like to have it? Captain Mainwaring.
But he can't have it.
Now look here, Godfrey. Hand over that gun at once.
I don't see why I should.
Are you refusing to obey an order on active service? Realise we could have you shot for this.
That'll be a bit tricky since he's the only one with a gun.
I mean, just
It's gorgeous,
I just
isn't it?
love that. I just thought, just brilliant. I mean, the timing, the cheekiness of the delivery, and I think it's at this point I would like to mention James Beck, who broke the heart of the rest of the cast, didn't he? The guy delivering that line right at the end. He died at the tender age of 44.
I was on holiday. I remember it happening because it was, both. Well, it wouldn't have seemed that young to me, being so much younger than him. But of course, with hindsight now, but it was the shock element. I just thought all these people were forever, and certainly didn't expect him to.
Yeah.
To leave us.
It was the drink,
soon.
wasn't it, that killed him? And
Was it?
Yeah, I saw Jimmy Perry had said that because he used to drink a lot. He said we all drank a lot. He said showbiz was like that then. He said that was part
society
of
was like that, wasn't it?
Exactly.
But
yeah.
showbiz perhaps more than a lot of industries, because I think that it's the classic sort of trying to have a bit of Dutch courage for the nerves and a lot of sitting around time. So what are you going to do with the sitting around time?
Yeah.
And for goodness sakes, TV Centre had a bar. You would retire there not just after the show, but during rehearsals, or between rehearsals at lunchtime.
Yeah. Jimmy Perry was saying, he said, I didn't realise how much of a problem James had. He said, until I saw his legs the one day and they were purple.
Oh God.
He said, and then I thought, oh God, I had no idea that he had a real problem with it. But what a great actor as well. And they never really replaced him. They replaced him in the radio series, didn't they? I think, but they never replaced him. They never tried to recast him.
No.
Which I thought was lovely, really, in a way. It was like
kind of mark of respect, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think, and an acknowledgement that you could never really genuinely replace him effectively.
But
people would always think that it wasn't him.
I kind of get the impression that Croft and Perry were real gents as well. I remember talking to when Jimmy Perry died. I talked to Vicky Michelle, who was in A Low a Low.
Oh right, remind me which role she was in, because I did actually work with
Renee. She used to. She was
Renee.
Yvette. Yvette.
She'd sing "Je ne regrette rien."
Yeah,
Is that?
I think
Gordon Kay's wife.
No, that's Carmen.
Oh,
Silvera,
sorry. The more
his
forward
girlfriend,
one, shall we say? Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, but she was saying what a gent they were, what gents they were, and how great they were to work for, and they were very involved as writers. They were always kind of on the set, and they were honing and refining. And she said, they always had the feeling that you were part of a family working with them, really, which I thought was lovely tribute, lovely thing to say about somebody that you work alongside. And 9 series, we mentioned earlier on, but 18 million they used to get viewing figures.
Oh gosh, yeah, just
18
amazing.
million? I mean, if you missed it, you missed it. It was in the days before video recorders, wasn't it, that this would have gone out? So,
yeah.
it was an
appointment to view.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Before we had water coolers, so you couldn't refer to water cooler moments.
No. We had teapot moments, did we then? We was to gather around the teapot.
Oh, luxury.
Yeah.
We couldn't afford a teapot. We just had tea bags.
Yeah.
But did you see how Perry and Croft got together on this project, and indeed thereafter in Hello, Hello, and so on?
No, one of them was an actor, wasn't it? Was it Perry?
I think it's Perry.
Yeah.
Jimmy Perry had written this script, but he happened to be working with David Croft in something with a wonderful punning title, Hugh and I. And he just
that would be
showed
with
his
what's his
script.
name, wouldn't it? Who was in The Blood Donor, Hugh. I can see he's the guy who walks off with Hancock's polo mints. Or his wine
Is
gums.
that a euphemism?
He's nipped,
Oh, right,
he's nipped me
no.
wine gums. Oh, I've got to look it up, otherwise that's going to kill me now.
Have I got to keep talking? Shall I just throw in another bit of detail which really intrigues me? Clive Dunn, who plays Corporal Jones, the butcher turned... he's the one who's in the plot. He's in the story. He's seen active service in absolutely ancient conflicts going back to the 19th century. But in real life, Clive Dunn... was related to Gretchen Franklin, better known as... Do you know who Gretchen was?
No.
Because I did actually work with her. She was in EastEnders, Ethel, who had the immortal line in one of the first shows I worked on, first editions of EastEnders. She said, talking about the doctor on the square, she said, "We'll get leg over." Which got a little titter amongst the crew anyway.
She was always
We
one
were
had
that
problem
way
with her
inclined.
willy, wasn't she, in later
Oh, yes, a
later
little
episodes?
dog.
Yeah. Hugh Lloyd was the guy I was trying to think of. It was actually
right,
he
yeah.
was in Hugh and I. Yeah, that was his own vehicle.
Right.
But sorry, anyway, so
hope
you were
it-
saying they were working on Hugh and I, and
And then Jimmy Perry showed David Croft his script. David liked it, but really significantly, David Croft then showed it to a guy called Michael Mills, who I think was head of comedy. Yeah, the BBC's head of comedy at the time. And of course, you really want powerful pairs of eyes to see your work, because it's all very well having mates say, "Oh, that's really good," but the person who can, tick the box and make it happen is the obviously high up in management. And Michael Mills did a tweak or two with some character names and so on. But who's going to knock those changes? Because it's just hard to imagine a more perfect show, really. So between them, they created this wonderful show. And in fact, the location, the fictional location, was originally in Jimmy Perry's script, Brightsea-on-Sea, which is a bit of a doesn't quite work.
no,
And then it became, I think it was Michael Mills changed it to Walmington-on-Sea.
Right.
And I can't help feeling, do you feel the word Walmington with that warm syllable at the front? Surely that is intentional, giving that warmth to it. Am I just imagining it?
no, I think you're absolutely right. And I have to say, this, we started off by saying about how what we thought of this and how it was part of our growing up. It was part of the background, if you like, to our growing up for a lot of people as well. I never thought of it as hilariously funny, and I wouldn't if you said, what are the standout comedies of the 70s or the late 60s, I wouldn't choose that.
Wouldn't be my first choice, certainly.
No, and I think the Croft and Perry stuff is very similar in as much as if you think the other things that they wrote, like Hello, Hello, isn't the best comedy you'll ever see, but it has a warmth and a charm about it, or as Sam Goldwyn would say, it has a warmth and a charm about it. But he also said, let's get things up to date with some snappy 17th century dialogue, so let's not put too much on that.
But each to their own.
Do you know what I mean? But it's not rip-roaringly hysterically funny. But Heidi High is another Croft and Perry thing.
I was going to say, yeah.
That you wouldn't go, oh, this is comedy gold, but it has a place, I think, in our comedy history, certainly.
Solid, dependable. And I have to say, there were some lulls, some laugh out loud moments for me watching this. Even the second time through, taking notes and being terribly serious and with my researcher's hat on and producer's hat and all of that, I was still laughing out loud. I thought, that's not bad for a 50-year-old show.
Oh, yeah.
You thought I was going to say a 50-year-old bloke, but let's move along swiftly.
I can see now it's the masseurs that's kept me so young looking all this time. That's what it is.
Well, I'm not. It could have gone either way. I wasn't sure whether she was going to make me feel very much older or very much younger. But
she'll either make you or break you, one or the other.
Yes, that sounds like
I've got to
a
say,
song.
at the end of that as well, as the credits rolled, I'm thinking, what will we be laughing at in 50 years' time still? What will we be going back to and go, oh, wow, that still stands the test of time? And I think that's a huge accolade, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, to have that kind of durability, that's, as Shakespeare might have said, devoutly to be wished. Do you know, a mate of mine once put the word Shakespeare into a spell checker, and I'm not saying that Microsoft is not particularly cultured, but it came back with sheep shearer.
It's computers that do funny things, though. I think I've told you this before, is that I was using some voice recognition software once. I sneezed and it just typed Honolulu. So...
I thought that was another joke about welcome to Jamaica, have a nice day, but we won't go there. It's a family show.
Is it time to get our stars out?
I think the stars are already out. Yes, and as ever, I have thought about it, but I haven't reached a definite conclusion, although I've got a feeling I know where you're going with your star rating before we get to next week's homework.
Okay. I'm on the fence, actually. I'll be honest. I'm teetering between a 3.5 and a 4. And I didn't
think you'd stoop so low as 3.5.
I think I'm going to give it a 4 simply because of what I've just said, which is, a 50-year-old piece of work that is still watchable, more than watchable. But you can watch it with a sense of pride and achievement and say that was when you think where technology was 50 years ago in 1968, no mobile phones, no computers, and you the script would have been typed on a typewriter. I think it gives it some kind of, so I think it would be a cruel and unusual punishment to give it a 3.5. So I'm going to give it a 4, definitely.
Yeah, I'm going for the same, but believe it or not, I had decided just before you made your announcement in that spur of the moment. Yeah, I mean, you've given 1 or maybe 2 5s in the past, but I haven't actually got to that moment yet. I'm a fussy old thing, but it's very close to being a 4.5. It gets a bit arbitrary, I suppose, that end of the scale. But marvellous piece of work, durability, and the fact that actually the radio station where you and I met, I was still using it as a comedy reference point for I think one afternoon between myself and my supporting gentleman beyond the glass, we ended up trying to cast each of the characters in Dad's Army as different members of the British political cabinet. And it just worked a treat.
Yeah.
I won't go into all of them, but of course, Captain Mainwaring, it was between Prime Minister or Chancellor, because of course he's a money man, being a bank manager. But so it went on, and, Minister of Defence, Secretary of State for the Health, and so on. I had great fun with that. I'll let the audience play with that if they want to.
Beautifully drawn characters, though, as you started off by saying, very much at the top of this podcast. It's they're just beautifully drawn characters. There's
absolutely
no question. Are you ready for your homework then, young man?
I like the young, but yes, I have pen and paper. I am poised.
Okay, I'm going to take you into the
Oh,
world.
sorry, I haven't finished yet.
Into the world of radio.
Oh, that's unlike you.
Only because there's so much great stuff on the TV, or has been on the TV, that I kind of want to share. But this is one that I think is just amazing. It's the first I heard this. I think it was on about 11 o'clock on Radio 4, and I got into the car. I vividly remember it. It was like a kind of November evening, and I got into the car, and I was coming home, and I don't know where I was coming home from, but I heard this. And I was just blown away. I was completely mesmerised by the thing, not least the fact that it's a monologue.
Ooh.
But it's
That'll be our third monologue from the radio.
But this is different. This is monologue drama. And I just found it fascinating. I hope you do as well. Now, I don't know to be cheeky and say, actually, shall we review 2 episodes? Because each episode is only 15 minutes long.
Oh, I'm prepared to bend the rules.
Are you happy with that? I mean, I'm
basis.
quite... If you want to do 15
yeah.
minutes, I don't, because that's as it was originally conceived. I think it ran for 2 series in the end. But they're only 15 minutes each, so we'll pick a couple of episodes to have a listen to. It's a program called All Bar Luke.
Okay.
And it's performed by the comedian and poet Tim Key. This actually turned me on to Tim Key. I'd never heard of the guy before. And I just thought, wow, this guy is amazing. He's a real fan of poetry. I think he does some poetry programs on Radio 4 at the moment as well now. And it takes us right back to 2007. He plays a character called Luke Walsall.
Yeah.
And it's just basically about his life and his interactions. But of course, you don't get to hear any of the interactions because it's a monologue. So there's only him. So how's that going to work?
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I'd like you to have a bash at for next week. Shall we say series 1, episodes 1 and 2?
Okay, you're on.
Because it's such an oldie, and it'll take you 10 years old. I can't believe that. But yeah, it's. I just found the whole concept just fascinating. And as I say, it was. Do you know, like you think, oh, I better concentrate on the driving again now. I forgot that's what I'm doing. It was one of those moments.
Series 1, episodes 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And with that, we must leave you, except for a quick mention for social media. We're at Comedy Slab on Twitter and Facebook, and we're all over the place in every possible sense in terms of getting the show. Do please subscribe so you get it as soon as it's available. And it certainly helps when the iPlayer window, if you're catching up on iPlayer from the BBC, is about to close. We're also on Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeart Radio, YouTube, all manner of places. And in fact, if you just search Comedy Slab, loads of lovely links come up, don't they?
Absolutely. And if you can hit the like button, that'd be nice as well, because we do get the stats, so we know there are people out there downloading and listening, and it's lovely to know that you're there. But if you could give us a like and spread the word around, which is the one thing you often say, is like let other people know, because it is a great way of passing it on and passing it around, spreading the joy.
It's your comedy heritage, guys. And on that quasi-serious note, it's farewell from myself, Adrian, and from...
Yes, from me as well. And remember, we don't like it up 'em, do we?